Hi, and welcome to episode 57 of the Breaking Bio podcast. I'm Morgan Johnson, a PhD student at the University of Guelph in Ontario, Canada.
Hi, I'm Bug. I'm also known as Gwen, and I write for Wired Science. I'm an entomologist.
Hi, I'm Heidi Smith. I'm a postdoc at the University of Texas at Austin.
Hi, I'm Stephen Ablett. I'm a postdoc at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia.
And today we're being joined by David Shiffman, who's a PhD candidate at the University of Miami. David, you want to say hi and tell us a little about your work?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on today. I am in an interdisciplinary environmental science research program at the University of Miami. It's called the Abbess Center for Ecosystem Science and Policy. And my work looks at the ecology and conservation of sharks. Specifically, I am studying the ecosystem role that sharks play in the coastal South Florida food chain, and also how different stakeholder groups such as fishermen and conservation activists perceive the ecosystem role that sharks play here in South Florida.
It was very polished.
Thanks.
I take it you've done this once or twice. I seem to recall you've been on TV numerous times talking sharks and various times.
Media training is I think an important and underutilized skill for scientists in general and grad students specifically, and I've been trying to teach some of my colleagues some of it.
So you've been up to this for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that it would get this big when you started with the sharks and the conservation, as far as the outreach part of it when you started?
No. But a lot of the outreach that I do now is built into the lab that I'm in, which is actually a lot of what attracted me to the lab that I'm in now. That's the R.J. Dunlap Marine Conservation Program. Sharktagging.com has a lot of information about our projects, as well as our Facebook fan page, facebook.com/sharktagging, has a lot of pictures of what we do. And I love the lab. The lab culture. Everyone helps everyone. We have 21 undergraduate interns right now.
Wow.
That help us with things, and it's been a lot of opportunities for professional development training and for me to do some mentorship. But what really attracted me to the lab was the outreach model. Every trip that we go on, which is, as a lab, 50 to 75 days a year we're out in the field, we have a group with us, either a high school class or college class, or a community organization of some kind, or sometimes a corporate group. And that last year we took over 1,500 people, of which over 1,000 were high school students, mostly from South Florida, out in the field with us to learn about sharks and learn about ocean conservation, and also to help with every aspect of the science. And we also do a lot of talks in schools, and I talk via Skype to schools all over the country. So outreach is a big part of what we do, and part of my research assistantship is actually running the lab social media. So we have a lab blog and a Facebook page that we share photos and news articles and things like that. So outreach is a big part of what we do.
That's incredible. So something people might not know about you, but I've seen you at 2 conferences before, and then also we're at Ix and Herps, is that you have a pretty big collection of fish shirts that you wear at conferences.
Sure do.
I wondered if that's something that you had before you joined the lab, or it's something that you expected?
I've gained one since I joined the lab. The first one of these I actually was in high school. I bought it off the back of my waiter at Red Lobster. They have awesome. They used to have awesome tacky Hawaiian shirts with fish on them, and I said to my waiter, "Do you guys sell those?" And he said, "No, they're only for employees." I said, "Can I buy that one?" And he took it off right there and sold it to me, and it actually paid for itself in employee discounts that I got whenever I wore it to Red Lobster pretty quickly. I now have 11 of them, and only 3 of them have sharks on them. The rest are just various fish or coral reef scenes.
Yeah,
I
would say.
Always looking to expand.
Yeah, at the Ix and Herps meeting, I would say that fish people always wear fish shirts. It's definitely how you can spot them out. But yeah, I like the festiveness.
We have a game that we play. The Ix and Herps meeting, for those of you who don't know, it's a big meeting that has ichthyologists and herpetologists. The American Elasmobranch Society, which is my primary professional society, attends that, as well as, are you ASIH?
Yeah.
That's a group that has people that study reptiles as well as non-shark fishes, and we all get together
amphibians. Amphibians as well.
Yeah. We all get together because there aren't enough of us to have our own meeting. So it's kind of interesting because sometimes I use a technique called stable isotope analysis to study the feeding ecology of sharks, and I may be at a given time I can go to a talk about population genetics of a species of sharks that I study, or stable isotope analysis of a species of lizards in the desert. So I can sort of learn a lot. But we play a game called Ick Person, Hurt Person, where we can, from across the room, determine if we think that somebody is someone that studies herpetology or someone that studies fish. And it's alarmingly easy to tell, particularly with the older males in the crowd.
Yeah. It also becomes, even within herps, you can always tell, like, often guys sort of, the males almost display. Like, people who study lizards, you get, like, some head bobbing, some displaying at the bar.
Are there waddles? Because that would be awesome. If they, like, dewlaps,
Yeah.
they, like, inflate their dewlaps. Because
yeah, it would be
There's
really
no
old
shark
flabby
flirting
ones.
at the bar. Shark flirting is fairly violent.
Yeah, none of that. That's actually a rule. But I would say often at that meeting when I meet like someone from an older generation and we're talking and I can tell he's a fish person and he's like, oh, icks or herps, and I say herps, I can feel the disappointment in it, and he's like, goodbye, long lost friend, goodbye. This is the last we will speak. There's a divide, yeah, definitely.
If I didn't know what you were talking about, that would sound really gross, incidentally. Which one of you has herpes? I don't know.
Either way, it's icky.
It's like tap, tap, tap on my computer. What are they saying?
As has been pointed out, I'm not the animal person.
So David, you mentioned that you bought somebody's shirt right off their back while you were in high school because it had fish on it. I take that to mean that you were into fish before you got to college. And long before. So how did you get interested in fish and particularly into sharks and become so, I don't want to say rabid because I guess sharks don't get rabies, but so enthusiastic for sharks?
Enthusiastic is a good word. Let's use that. So I feel like most little kids go through either a shark thing or a dinosaur thing. And I did both. And I really liked both growing up, and I've actually had a neat conversation with Brian Switek, who's a paleontologist recently, and he said he also went through a shark thing, but he chose the other direction. And since I was very little, this has been the case. At my master's defense, unbeknownst to me, my mom had sent pictures of toddler me in T-shirts with sharks on them to my master's advisor, and they presented them on the screen. But
that is such a nightmare for me. Oh my God, that was terrible.
It was amusingly handled, but
okay.
I grew up in Pittsburgh, pretty far from the ocean, but we had the Pittsburgh Zoo and PPG Aquarium. It wasn't called that yet, but I grew up going to that aquarium, and my parents could just park me at the shark tank all day, and I would be fascinated and be upset to leave whenever they would come back, and I've just always liked the ocean and always liked sharks, even though I grew up really far from it. And actually, a lot of our interns in the R.J. Dunlap Marine Conservation Program are from the Midwest. We have a lot from Ohio and Western Pennsylvania, far from the ocean, and some from Michigan. So there's something about growing up in the Midwest that attracts people to the ocean.
Yeah, and makes you awesome. Just saying.
That too, of course.
Well, look, David, we can't have a conservationist and shark guy on without talking about what's going on in Australia right now. For those of you who don't know, there's a program in place in Western Australia. I don't know a lot about it, but they're trapping and even killing sharks along safe zones because of fear of shark attacks. And I'm just wondering what you have to say about that.
It is so. I was one of more than 100 marine ecologists that signed a letter saying that the government should not do this. That there are other alternatives. Culls of this nature have been tried before. In Hawaii, they were tried. It does not work. The odds of being bitten by a shark are so low to begin with. that you can't substantially reduce them unless you basically kill all the sharks. And that's not really feasible with what they're using, particularly since several of the species they're targeting, great whites and tigers, engage in huge migrations. A great white shark was tagged on South Africa and swam to Western Australia. That's really far. So even if you do successfully kill all of the great whites off the beaches, in another month there'll be a different group. So being bitten by a shark is really unlikely. Hundreds of millions of people go in the water every year. Fewer than 100 on average are bitten by a shark. You are more likely to be more people are bitten by other people in New York City every year than are bitten by sharks in the whole world.
That's not as rare occurrence as you would like to, maybe though. maybe that's not a good comparison.
To people who haven't ridden the subway in New York, that sounds like an impressive stat. But more people are killed by cows, more people are killed by coconuts, more people are killed by flower pots every year. Vending machines are death traps. I stay away from those things.
True that.
Sharks, not that dangerous. But the issue is, it's instant international news. If someone gets bitten by a shark in Mexico, it's headline news in Poland. So someone anywhere in the world hears about it when any of this happens. So everyone thinks that it's much more likely than it is. And it's actually a big threat facing sharks, or a big reason for the threats facing sharks, is people, when they hear 25% of all species of sharks, skates, and rays are threatened with extinction, the highest percentage of any group of vertebrates, their reaction is, oh, good, because of this misinformation that the media shares. It's bad news.
So
go ahead, Stephen.
Sorry, when you have a situation like this where the science is extremely clear, and the lack of potential for the intervention to work is clear, but it falls on deaf ears. What do you think we should do about that? What's our step forward to help fix that?
I think the best we can do is just keep making noise about it. Make sure that Australian voters know that it's bad news, that it's not helping, that the government there is doing something that is not going to make you safer instead of something that could make you safer, and is in the process killing important members of the population of very threatened species. They're targeting only the largest animals, which for many species of sharks it can take 15 years or more to reach reproductive maturity. So it's really bad news, even though relatively few animals have been killed so far. I think the last statistics I saw were about 30 had been caught. I don't know how many of those have been killed, but several of them had.
I've seen 5 to 10 over the last few days.
Yeah. So what I do not recommend doing, and there have been people doing this, is damaging the fishing gear that the government is using to catch sharks. What that does is it makes the government employees seem like the victims because they're being attacked by eco-extremists. That doesn't help anybody. They have more gear, and all it does is make the news story being about the activists attacking government equipment rather than the government killing threatened species in a way that doesn't help anybody.
So, as you're talking here, I was thinking about how similar this sounds to the things that people say about spiders.
Yes.
And all of the examples you were giving about, more people are killed by cows and bitten in New York City, those are the exact same examples I used for spiders.
Nice.
Just why I was sitting here going, yep. And it seems like there's a similar problem for both of those animals, that the media feeds it. And so can you talk a little bit about the interactions? I've seen some interesting interactions you've had with the public, but also sort of you've also done some really out-of-the-box things, like serving as a science advisor for some novels. You've been on news shows. So how do you think you're having an impact by the different things that you do, or is it just kind of give me a shot, I'll try it?
Yeah, I think the biggest impact that I have had has likely been convincing my colleagues who know more than me to try social media outreach. But I've gotten some fairly big names in the shark fisheries management and science community to try Twitter after seeing some of my presentations about it. And that is helpful for everyone because believe it or not, there are questions about sharks that I don't know how to answer. I know it's a big shock, but I get them all the time. And I can say, hey, you know who does know that is Sonia Fordham. Let me ask her on Twitter. And you know who does know that is Toby Curtis. Let me ask him on Twitter. And these are wonderful resources for everybody to have. But I have had some interesting experiences with people on the internet. As I said, part of my research is on stakeholder knowledge and attitudes and perceptions, which actually means that these interactions on Twitter are part of my PhD research. And one of my goals, and if I can get this to happen, I'll be really happy, is to get a term that I use for them introduced into the actual peer-reviewed scientific literature that some of you may have seen, wackadoodle. I refer to some of these people as wackadoodles, and I don't like when people call them crazy, because that's, first of all, they're not, and second of all, that demeans people who have actual mental illness. They're not. I don't think I've ever called anyone stupid. I have called. You can be an extremist and be wrong without being stupid. And that just, if I were to call them stupid, that would only perpetuate, ivory tower academia stereotypes. But they're wrong, and their views are way out there. So wackadoodle seems to be suitably demeaning of them without demeaning anybody else. But I get death threats all the time. I was on a CNN panel live tweeting Blackfish, the documentary about orcas in captivity. And several different unrelated people said to me, how would you like it if we kidnapped your children and locked them in a small box for all their life? Well, I wouldn't like that very much at all, but that's not the same thing as marine mammal captivity. So there's with this giraffe thing, the giraffe at the Copenhagen Zoo, I got a few death threats. Yay. There's interesting engagements with people online, but I'd like to think I have had anecdotal evidence of people telling me that I have changed their mind about sharks and about the ocean and about marine conservation in general. But I have been successful in getting large groups of people to get involved in certain specific activism, like the shark call that Stephen mentioned. That gets a lot of media attention. But something else that happened recently, the state of Maryland here in the U.S. was considering a fairly drastic revision to shark fisheries management policy, and no one was talking about it. So I worked with some high-profile conservationists and got people educated about it and talking about it, and they got on most of those fisheries management proposals, they get maybe half a dozen public comments submitted. They got I haven't gotten the official numbers yet, but it's probably going to be pretty close to 100 people opposing it. And that tells people, that tells these policymakers that there are people out there who are paying attention to what they do and who care about what they do, and that even that can be enough to make them change some practice. Because a lot of conservation policy nonsense happens not because no one cares, but because no one knows that it's happening. And social media can be a very powerful tool in educating people about what's going on and letting policymakers know that they know what's going
on. With the threats and everything, is there ever a time where you feel like maybe you wish you weren't so much in the spotlight, like maybe you'd like to step back, or is it always worth it for you?
I have had some crazy negative experiences with social media interaction, but overall the positive way outweigh the negative. I've never really thought about stopping. I have just wonderful experiences with people all the time. Members of the Science Online community have been very supportive, and it's really exciting for me to see the innovative science communication and outreach things that they're trying to do. But also, I interact, like just today, I had a tweet from someone who's a sixth grader in the Midwest that's doing their homework assignment about sharks, and they wanted to ask me some questions. I love that stuff, and there's way more of that. Though there are certainly times when the negative outweighs the positive. Overall, the positive is definitely stronger.
Yeah, that's really great. I mean, I've always thought you have such a positive attitude, and I'm sure that that really helps you.
It helps to have a puppy, actually. She's at my feet right now, and whenever things get too crazy, I just take a little break and play with the puppy, and that helps a lot.
Yeah, everybody
Good
needs
strategy.
a puppy. Yeah.
Or, a cat.
Yeah.
Well, I hate cats, but my wife loved cats, so...
So you compromised and got a cat.
Yeah, pretty much.
I know how that goes.
Let's not go down this road, guys.
Yeah.
Back to sharks.
Yeah. So speaking of sharks, mermaids.
Yay!
So how crazy do you get every time they air that?
Yeah, every
my
time you
God.
say mermaids, Morgan has to take a drink.
Yeah.
Ooh, fun.
Luckily, it's non-alcoholic, so.
Oh, that's not fun.
Well, I'd be Tom if I was drinking beer at this point with all the mermaid talk. I'm sure is about to happen.
Yeah. So Animal Planet aired a documentary a while ago called Mermaids, the Body Found, and then had a follow-up, Mermaids, the New Evidence, that purported to show evidence that mermaids are real and that the government and scientists are covering it up. The documentary was, of course, completely false. They don't even claim otherwise. There's a disclaimer at the end saying that it was fictional. They had interviews in mainstream media publications where they said it was fictional just to get people thinking. And yet, I get a lot of death threats and harassment from that, with people saying, you're trying to cover up the most amazing discovery ever. And like, why do you hate us? Why are you trying to keep the ocean to yourself? It's really bad. It's really a problem that people think that this is happening, because if you know so little about the ocean that you think there's a half human, half fish that people interact with all the time, then it means you don't have a clue what's actually going on with the ocean, and what's actually going on in the ocean is bad, and people need to know about it and do something about it. So it's
You seriously
really
get death threats?
Oh yeah.
Over mermaids?
Over mermaids, because I'm working with the evil government to
Yeah.
cover up the existence of mermaids.
I better cancel my blog posts on leprechauns then. Jesus.
Stop hiding the truth.
It's really a big deal, and we can always tell when Animal Planet re-airs it, because all of a sudden Andrew Thaler, the Southern Fried Scientist who runs our blog, he wrote a post called "Mermaids is a fictional documentary," and it's one of the first things that pops up if you Google is "Mermaids: The Body Found," a fictional documentary, and we'll just log on to stats one day, and we got 5,000 hits on that post. They must have re-aired the show.
You guys must get some awesome incoming questions, like search terms for your blog.
Let me tell you.
But think about the kind of person who watches the mermaid documentary and at the end is like mind blown the government's covering up the existence of mermaids. That's sad.
That was the puppy.
Yep.
Very cute.
She was scratching to get up on my lap. There's thunder outside, and apparently today we've decided that we're afraid of thunder after 2 years of having no reaction to it. She always climbs up on my lap when I'm Skyping with elementary school classes. Excuse me. And it's very funny to see their reaction, because they have me blown up giant on a screen. She's a small dog. She's about 30 pounds. But when her face is blown up to the size of a wall, it's apparently quite startling.
That's awesome. Certainly helps with the engagement. So while we're still kind of talking about mermaids and how TV is screwing with everybody's lives, you have a big investment, we'll say, during Shark Week as almost the counterpoint for a lot of their shows. Any word on whether you may actually become an official part of Shark Week, or whether they're going to acknowledge that they're full of shit and they should bring you onto line?
That'd be nice. No, there's nothing official. I've been talking to people behind the scenes for years. The Discovery Channel has good people who got involved in nature programming because they wanted to spread the word about awesome things going on in the world. And many of them are very upset by some of the nonsense that's aired on Shark Week in recent years. And what drives me nuts more than the horrendously awful quality of the programming is first of all, in general, when you're airing a show about Megalodon and saying it's still alive when it's not, what that's saying is, and the same thing with the mermaids, it's saying we don't believe there's anything in the real world that's interesting enough to get a lot of viewers, which is just wrong. Like, look at the success of BBC's Planet Earth. or things like that. Those are just pure natural history documentaries, and they're wildly successful, and they're awesome.
Well, it also feeds a distrust of scientists.
Yeah.
Which is like we need more. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Shark Week. I grew up watching Shark Week. It's a big part of how I got interested in sharks, living far from the ocean. I've watched every year. But in the last few years, it's been a focus on just made-up nonsense like the Megalodon special, and specials focusing on people getting bitten by sharks. And there's so few of these incidents that if you watch in a Shark Week year, there'll be the same story featured on 3 different specials. Because it just shark bites just don't happen that much, and the reenactments are just impossible. They're describing people that are fighting off a shark off their leg for like 15 minutes. No, the shark will bite, realize we're not food, and swim away. People say punch the shark underwater. First of all, that would look like that. But second of all, you don't have time. The shark is not there by the time you realize something's happened. So it's just blatantly wrong.
I will admit that's always what I thought as well. That would be my plan. So
yeah, well, you won't. Yeah. You more than likely won't have a negative experience with a shark. But if you do, it'll be gone before you have a chance to turn around and try and fail to punch it.
So, David, where can people follow along with you and your research and your outreach and all the things that you're busy doing nowadays?
Sure. I am on Twitter at WhySharksMatter, all one word. I have a Facebook fan page, facebook.com/WhySharksMatter, and our lab's Facebook page, which has lots of pictures and updates from our field research, as well as general marine science and conservation news, is facebook.com/sharktagging. We also share blog posts, which are written by our lab's interns and are very good. We're very proud of everything that they're done.
And you're doing some crowdfunding as well, right? Do you want to pitch that while we have a chance?
Sure. I'm participating in the 4th SciFund Challenge, which is a crowdfunding for scientific research enterprise. And I am trying to raise funds for a shark feeding ecology project that has conservation implications. There are any amount of donation helps, but some of the larger ones have rewards associated with them, such as the ability to join us in the field for a day to tag sharks.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure that we put a link up on the Breaking Bio blog, which you can find at home by searching for Breaking Bio or by going directly to breakingbio.com. Meanwhile, we want to thank David, and we'll see everybody next week when we have a new and exciting guest.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Bye.
After 2 years of having no reaction to it.
Well, I think congratulations. I think that's actually the first dog that's photobombed an episode. We've had...
And she's taken off my headphones. Yeah, I heard the first dog. She's always so cooperative.
Yeah, that was good.
That was awesome.
I may or may not edit that out.
All of our cats have photobombed at various points, so I think that's nice. The first dog that's made it on. So congrats to the dog. Oh, that was pretty awesome.